Down to business.
When he drinks, he thinks.
That's the nectar of the gods, baby.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the #1 liquid-fueled, liquid lubricated show on the interwebs. This is the Whiskey Musings Broadcast, and I am your humble and very thankful for just all kinds of things, especially on this weekend. Here on the Whiskey Musings Broadcast, welcome everybody. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, everybody. I thank everybody who is here, even if you just stop by for just a short minute. Tonight I'm gonna digress a little bit from, well, maybe a lot in some people's eyes, from my usual stuff, because this has been a topic that I've kind of wanted to cover for quite some time, and I just want to say that I am really, really, really looking forward to the show. This is, like I said, there's a couple of topics that I want to cover tonight that are, in my mind, very important. And I want to share them with you. I want to share a little bit of what I've kind of learned in terms of, digging up, some things that have confused me in the past, that have been a little, shall we say, controversial, I guess, not really the best term, but the only one that I can think of. All right. So first of all, I want to thank Daybreak. Thank you very, very much for your Rumble rant and your subscription as well. I do appreciate that. Daybreak, of course, says hello, everyone, which wonderful thing. Thank you so much, Day. I do appreciate that very, very much. Okay. So a couple of things that I also want to cover too. I received a message about what happened. I don't know if anybody really watches, I've been showing up on Booze and News, which is another podcast here on Rumble. That is, essentially they stream pretty much, Monday through Friday, sort of. They might be taking Fridays off for the summer, I think is the latest. But anyway, a couple of days ago, something happened while they were streaming to one of the hosts, to Tim. And I've received a little bit more information about that, and I want to get into that in just a couple of minutes here in regards to that. But first, I've got to do my first couple of segments, and then I'll get into that kind of stuff. So first things first is, of course, tonight's affiliate. We're going to talk about the Institute on the Constitution. The Institute on the Constitution was established in 2004 as a 501c3 nonprofit with one mission: to restore the constitutional republic through grassroots education. All courses and materials are developed using primary source documents and taught from the American view of law and government as defined in the Declaration of Independence in the following 3 key points. 1, there is a God. 2, our rights come from him. And 3, the purpose of civil government is to secure and protect our God-given rights. The IOTC offers an opportunity to educate yourself on our most precious founding document, the Constitution of the United States. They also provide tools to educate your community and get involved with local government. Start by taking their free U.S. Constitution course and go from there. Use my affiliate link, IOTC.whiskeymusings.online to sign up. And while you are there, take a moment to look through their other course material and information. My affiliate link, once again, is IOTC.whiskeymusings.online to get great content and to learn about our historical founding and support the show in the process. That's IOTC, spelled out India, Oscar, Tango, Charlie, .whiskeymusings.online. Or if you just want to purchase this fabulous Saddleback leather-bound U.S. Constitution to support the show, go to constitution.whiskeymusings.online. Look at this. This is 1/8 inch leather, roughly. It is, they have pages in here that are water resistant, and take a look at that binding. That binding is stitched all the way through the entire document. These guys, the manufacturer puts a 100-year warranty on this against materials and workmanship. So if this thing falls apart just over the course of time or whatever, you can contact them. You can either send it back and they'll fix it, or they'll send you a new one if they can't fix it. So this is a great little keepsake. It is buddy tested, buddy approved. It is my youngest Whiskey Warrior approved as well. He is using it to go through and get some badges for his Eagle Scout. And this is just an absolute wonderful little keepsake. You can take it and pass it down for generations. And so this is absolutely wonderful. You might want to take a look at that. That's constitution.whiskeymusings.online. They're $19. I mean, they're really not for a keepsake. It's just absolutely wonderful. So do me a favor, go and check out Institute on the Constitution for me. Go and check them out today. And I thank them for allowing me to be an affiliate and for them to be on the show, of course. All right, so let's get on to our next segment, and I promise I'll get to my other stuff in a moment. So hold on just a second here. And of course, we'll go on to On This Day in American History. And of course, for this segment On This Day in American History, we read from the American Patriots Almanac. It is a book written by William J. Bennett and John T.E. Cribb. You can pick this up where books are sold. It is a very thick book containing a whole bunch of essentially a day-by-day notes and things that happened in American history on each day throughout the entire year. Plus, it is chock full of other things in between every single month. It has things like descriptions about the different flags that we've had, descriptions and talks about some of the presidents and things of that nature in between. Just an absolutely fabulous book. If you can go and get one, that would be just great. You won't be supporting the show with that. That's fine. I'd rather you get it in your hands so you can learn about our American history. And of course, today is April 8th. And the April 8th has the only thing to do was keep swinging. My motto was always to keep swinging, whether I was in a slump or feeling badly or having trouble off the field. The only thing to do was keep swinging. That was Henry Aaron's approach to baseball and life, especially in the early 1970s when Hammerin' Hank was playing for the Atlanta Braves and getting close to overtaking Babe Ruth as the all-time home run leader. As he grew closer to the record-breaking 715 mark, the hate mail began to arrive, and what should have been the best time of his life turned into an ordeal. Some people couldn't stand the thought of a black man taking Ruth's place as the home run king. There were thousands of malicious letters. You will be the most hated man in this country. You're black, so you have no business being here. Even death threats like, I'd like to kill you, bang, bang, you're dead. P.S. It might happen. He just kept swinging through the ugliness, quietly carrying on the work of Jackie Robinson, who had first broken baseball's color barrier and was taking comfort from the flood of fan mail urging him on. On April 8th, 1974, Henry Aaron stepped up to the plate in Atlanta and hammered number 715 over the left center field wall. As he rounded the bases, millions of Americans cheered. Few realized the full extent of the gauntlet he had run. But his dignity and perseverance was evident. President Nixon may have said it best. When I think of Hank Aaron, I think of power and poise, of courage and consistency. But most of all, I think of a true gentleman, an outstanding citizen. On the field and off, Hank Aaron represents America at its very best. And that is On This Day in American History. So, I hope that at least that gives people a lesson and a message. Honestly, I didn't actually plan that one. I didn't even notice it. I just found the date and stuck in the bookmark. But, we need to understand that even through down times, and I'm just going to take a moment to talk here, but we need to take a moment and understand that even through the down times, sometimes it's just best if we just keep going. If we get in on a situation, I think the phrase that I've heard a lot is, if you're going through hell, just keep going. And that pretty much is kind of what that little story was talking about. And sometimes you just have to push through whatever is going on because of the fact that you kind of have no other choice. Sometimes you can't go back. You can't change what's going to happen or what has happened to you. So at times it's just best for you to just keep going. Don't stop. In the words of Hank Aaron, keep swinging, no matter what, whether it's good times or bad, just keep on doing what you're doing and push through. And eventually things will get better. All right. I've already been asked this. What am I drinking tonight? Tonight, I am drinking the Four Roses bourbon that I have. And, I just grabbed that thinking that I would have it. So, and yeah, as Buddy Weiser pointed, he was a good person off the field too. And we have a couple new people in the chat. Thank you for joining. Here's Aspen Waygirl. Anyway, she says that she's got Hank Aaron's baseball cards. So, yeah. All right. A little bit of a somber note. Well, first of all, before I get to that, happy Easter tomorrow, everybody. For those of you who celebrate Easter, remember, this is a celebration of life. This is not just a hunt for Easter eggs or anything like that. This is a celebration of life. This is a celebration of the day that our Lord Jesus Christ rose from the grave, as the scriptures foretold, and ascended into heaven to sit at the right hand of the Father to come back again. And I think in a way he is probably on his way. I'm starting to see some signs that if you read the Bible, you're gonna kind of be amazed. There's some eye-opening stuff going on in there. All right. But before I get to that, I do want to say this because I did mention. So I don't know if anybody here, I know some people here have watched Booze and News. A couple days ago, some bad news came during the broadcast, during the Booze and News broadcast. And unfortunately, Tim had to cut the show short. He came back the next day and he did kind of explain what's going on. And so, I just want to pass along a bit of information that I received through a third party to this situation. And I just want to say, first of all, that Dutt and his family, or not Dutt, sorry, Tim and his family need prayers for this. They're a member of their family passed very, very quickly. And I found out, totally suddenly, there was just no two ways about it. But I did find out again through a third party that there is a GoFundMe for the young man who passed. And this is being put on by his sister. You can read it, but it basically, I'll kind of read it for you here, but you can go to the site, and I'm going to post this in the chat, right right now. Let me go ahead and put that in here. This is the GoFundMe account. Now, I'm just going to tell you, if you feel inclined to do so, please go ahead and donate. It is entirely up to you. Basically, here's how the GoFundMe was set up. My name is Faith Martin, and I am one of Gage's sisters. Gage suddenly and unexpectedly passed away Wednesday night. It was one of the worst phone calls a sister could possibly get. Gage was a known man around the area for being so caring and loving, and always had such a big smile on his face. He was definitely a light. This has been a very tragic and emotional roller coaster for our family, his child, and his child's mother. We are in need of help to pay for funeral costs. Any donations will help and will be greatly appreciated. We will be having a celebration of life for Gage later. Once that is all set, we will update friends of his so they can join and share all the memories they had with Gage. So that pretty much is the situation. They are looking for about $5,000. Right now, they're running just under $1,000 or $980. So just think about it. I'm not urging any of you to do it, but just think about it. And please, if you get an opportunity, if you have a little extra cash and can go ahead and donate, I'm sure that the family would appreciate it. This was something that happened very quickly, very suddenly. And I know that it affects, everyone when this stuff happens. So, again, I understand there's people out there, there's some that are cautious. I get it. I honestly don't have that much connection to the family. I just happen to know that this, these people, they're really nice people from what I know of them. And I would really appreciate it if you at least consider it. Whether or not you donate, that's entirely up to you. But if you would at least consider it and help them out. I actually believe that helping people out locally, and helping people out from person to person, if you can, that is much better than any government program could ever do. So, let's crowdsource, crowdfund. Let's help get these folks the closure that they need for a very quick and very tragic situation. And I again, prayers for the family that they can get through this. And again, keep in mind, if you're going through hell, sometimes you just got to keep going. So anyway, so that's pretty much all I want to say about that. Okay. Now, right before I came on the broadcast, let's kind of turn a little bit here, but right before I came on the broadcast, I received a direct message from, darn it, I just killed it. Hang on. I received a direct message from our friend Outlaw Dogs. And of course, for anybody that knows, Outlaw Dogs, and I'm going to, give me just a second here. Let's get this so I can get into my account without scaring too many people away. It's okay. It popped right back up. That's cool. So anyway, everybody knows Outlaw Dogs. Outlaw Dogs has some three cute puppies, that she is able to get them to, wear costumes. And so every so often she'll send me a photo like this. So there's the Outlaw Dogs. We have Bonnie and then Billy in the middle and Clyde over on the right. So Bonnie's the white one on the left. And Billy is in the middle. And of course, Clyde is over on the right. And so they are all set up as Easter bunnies, for this Easter, you should have seen them. They had, they've done tinfoil hats for Mark K's Conspiracy Theory Thursday. They had, leprechaun stuff on and that kind of stuff for March. So it was pretty cool. But anyway, I just want to pass that along. And then also there was something about kegs, but I'm not much of a keg person. Obviously I drink whiskey. I don't drink beer, but there's some kegs apparently that are being set up for for the outlawed dog celebrations tomorrow. I guess. Anyway, all right. Enough of that. Okay. So I want to talk for a couple of minutes here, mainly just because I've taken a lot of hits on social media on a couple of things. And it's not, some of it is political. I'm certainly going to not argue that piece out. Some of it is political, but I can tell you that it kind of centers around religion in and of itself. And the main one, of course, is I've always maintained for many, many years that America and its founding is based on the Judeo-Christian values and backgrounds. And I've stated this multiple times, and I kind of got, I won't say blasted, but I've had a few people who have been like, no, that's not true. And so I decided to go and take a look. And like I said, this particular question that I've been running around in my mind, it was something that I wanted to make sure that I was correct on. And so one of the things that obviously everybody knows about the Puritans coming over. And we know about the Quakers, and we know about eventually the Amish and the Mennonites, and several other things that are out there. But the biggest question that keeps coming up is people are saying, well, no, the American colonials were deists, and deists were not Christians. Okay. Well, first of all, as I've covered this topic before. In fact, in my 2 Myths episode, just a few episodes back, I covered this topic, how, Thomas Jefferson talked about the separation of church and state in his letter when he was president. And that seems to be the common belief, is that church and the state are supposed to be completely separated. And my comment to that is the language that was used in the First Amendment actually doesn't talk about taking religion out of government, but it is telling government that you can't get involved in religion. So it's essentially coming just one way. Okay. And even that is sort of misunderstood. And the reason being is because so many people think of separation of church and state as part of the Establishment Clause in the First Amendment. Okay. So the First Amendment basically says that the government cannot establish a religion nor prevent the free exercise thereof. So in other words, the government can't mess around in religion. But nothing in the First Amendment actually says that religion can't actually exist within government, which is part of the reason why in our early days, we had, and we still, as tradition, we still start off, the Continental or the Congress gatherings with prayer. It's just now that we bring in other people. We don't just have, Christian religions. We've had Muslim prayers. We've had, Buddhist prayers. We've had so many different other prayers as a part of the start of Congress. And essentially what has kind of been glossed over is the idea that, first of all, America's values are very commonly considered Christian values: morality, ethics, integrity, honor, the idea of always doing what's right. And so, you can't escape the idea. You can't escape the idea that America was founded on Judeo-Christian values. Now, I mentioned the word deist, and a lot of people talk about, what is a deist? And here's the thing, as far as like the whole idea of deism or deists. And let me go ahead and bring this up here. I got to find where it is. Okay, hold on. Where is it? Because I did a bunch of searches right here. I gotta find it. Here it is. Okay. So let's go ahead and just talk for a quick second about what is deism. Now, according to Britannica, okay, deism was an unorthodox religion attitude that found expression among a group of English writers, beginning with Edward Herbert, and in the first half of the 17th century, and then ending with Henry St. John in the middle of the 18th century. These writers were subsequently inspired a similar religious attitude in Europe during the second half of the 18th century and the colonial United States of America in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. In general, deism refers to what can be called natural religion, the acceptance of a certain body of religious knowledge that is inborn in every person or that can be acquired by the use of reason, and the rejection of religious knowledge when it is acquired through either revelation or the teaching of any church. Okay, so here's the thing. A deist essentially believes in a higher power, hence the reason the term endowed by our Creator rather than endowed by God. Now, just to give you an idea, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and James Madison were all considered deists, okay? They believed in a higher power, but they did not believe in what was called the revelation theory. So in other words, they didn't necessarily believe in the Bible itself. They didn't believe that God revealed himself to people, and they believed that you could deem the purpose of the Creator and the Creator's laws based on what you could see around you within the natural world. And this is kind of where the idea natural law versus man's law comes into play. See, every single one of the founders all believed in a higher power. They all believed in essentially a God or a creator of some type. They also all believed in the fact that some type of religion or religious belief was what was needed and was essentially required to understand the natural law, which is where the rights come from, where our rights come from, and are enumerated as a part of the Constitution, by the way. And that, in turn, created the idea that man's law was designed to support and defend and make sure that natural law or God's law was followed. And that was the whole purpose of civil government, which is part of the reason why we talk about that as a part of the Institute on the Constitution. The Institute on the Constitution, says that the laws, all of our rights come from God, that the purpose of civil government is to protect and secure our God-given rights. And so that's the whole piece and part of the whole thing. Now, a deist is not a Christian per se, because again, remember, keep in mind that a deist does not believe in the revelation piece of it, meaning that they didn't necessarily believe that God came here to earth and revealed himself to man like what you would see in our Bible. Okay. However, that sounds an awful lot like Judaism in the general sense of the term. And the reason being is because as a someone who follows the Jewish religion, they believe in a God, but they don't believe in Jesus Christ necessarily as the Son of God. They believe he existed. They believe that he was a potentially a prophet, but they do not believe that he is the Son of God. Okay. So there's similarities there. And so I would say that the deists kind of followed more of the Jewish religion necessarily than the Christian religions. Now, the thing that's kind of interesting is even after our nation was founded, okay, even after our nation was founded, there was a lot of infighting amongst the religions. And so, today we believe that America is, you can worship as you well please and so on and so forth, but that didn't happen in the original colonies. In fact, in the original colonies, let me see if I can bring this up here. Let's see which one this is. Oops. Hope I didn't kill anything. Okay. In the original colonies, most of the New Englanders were actually, oh, sorry, that's the wrong one. Maybe it's this one. No, I must have closed it accidentally. Darn it. Okay. So in the New England states was mostly Puritans. And though, that general sect of religion. Then as you moved southward, what you ended up with was those who actually went to like familiar churches. They were more of what I would consider, some of the Catholics, some of the other, some of the other types of, so the New England colonies were largely Puritans. The middle colonists were mixtures, including Quakers, and Catholics, Lutherans, Jews, and some others. Okay. The southern colonists generally were Baptists and Anglicans. But the one commonality across all of those is the fact that everybody, in terms of that, they all believed in the one creator. They all believed in God. Okay. Now, I don't necessarily want to dive into this, a discussion in terms of like the differences of the religions, because believe me, I'm not even anywhere close to being knowledgeable enough to discuss that on a regular basis. But I can tell you, as far as the general sense of the American colonists, they all believed in some type of a religion that was based on and came from one singular God. And that God essentially gave us rights. And those rights were what they agreed upon and enumerated as a part of the first 10 amendments after the Constitution was put into place. Now, keep in mind, the Constitution was our second shot. Our first shot was the Articles of Confederation, which basically broke down and fell apart fairly quickly, honestly. And so when they got back together and they created the Constitution of the United States, they really, really, really put a lot of effort into it. Now, James Madison and Thomas Jefferson both believed that religion was a personal thing, that it didn't necessarily belong as a part of government, but they were sort of the outliers. Benjamin Franklin kind of in there too. But they were sort of the outliers. And the funny fact is that, well, funny not as in a ha-ha, but funny as in interesting, is that as I pointed out in my other show, where I talked about the two myths that were debunked, Thomas Jefferson wasn't even in the country when the Constitution itself was drafted. Thomas Jefferson was over in France, acting as our ambassador to France. And so he wasn't even there during the time that they were debating and talking about the Constitution and everything else. And so to put that much stock in the idea that Jefferson knew what the intent was with the First Amendment is kind of questionable at best. But the thing about it is that we need to understand that, again, that wall of separation was not an impervious wall. It was more to make sure that the government did not do what the English king did in creating a mandatory religion that everyone had to go. So, the whole purpose of the First Amendment, really, when it comes to religion, was not necessarily to take religion out of government, but it was more to tell government, you can't mess with us. Okay? So, I just wanted to kind of bring that out because, again, I've been hit on that subject a couple of times, and just because they're a deist, yes, technically they're not a Christian, but they did have Judeo-Christian values. Ultimately, that's essentially where our founding came from, is Judeo-Christian values. All right. Okay. So there's that one. Now, the other thing that I want to talk about, and I kind of have to preface this with a look into all of the things that we have in terms of references and resources. Now, usually whenever I look for something and I'm trying to like fit it within a certain period or whatever, one of the things that I do, I like to consider myself as sort of a researcher. I like to consider myself in terms of digging into, want to trying to get to the closest that I can to the text that's available at the time and the translations. And so one of the things that I've found, especially for just to kind of give you an example, what I mean by that, when you start talking about the Constitution, when you talk about the different amendments, when you talk about the language that's being used as a part of the Constitution, one of the resource manuals that you can go to would be the Webster's Dictionary that was published at the time. Perfect example is in terms of the Second Amendment, the whole concept of what does well-regulated mean? Well, when you look at the dictionary of the time, well-regulated, the most common definition was basically meant in working order and had nothing to do with what a lot of leftists want to call, well-regulated, meaning well-regulated in terms of the government put a whole bunch of stuff on it. And that's not what it means. It actually means in working order, very, a good process, that kind of stuff. The thing in the Webster's Dictionary talks about a well-regulated clock, basically, or a well-regulated mind, something that is very well-maintained, well-kept. And so that was the purpose of the term well-regulated in the Second Amendment. Well, you wouldn't know that if you didn't go to, the Merriam-Webster's Dictionary. Okay. Now, that being said, we have the same kind of situation when it comes to things like the Bible in particular. Now, I actually have 4 different versions of the Bible that I use for reference. The first one here, which you can see is pretty, kind of well used, is the New International Version, the NIV. I also have a King James Version. As soon as I can get it to look. Oh, okay. So this is the King James Version right here. All right. Then I also have, because this is just the way that I roll, I have the English Standard Version, okay, the ESV. And then I went and purchased this, but the Berean Study Bible. Now, this one you don't hear a lot about, and I'm honestly, I don't know why, but I've looked into it, and apparently the Berean Study Bible does something that the other Bibles don't, which essentially is that the Berean Study Bible actually does things where it does it brings forth the text and tries to define terms within the original Greek and the original Hebrew to be able to cross over. And it's actually been in some circles said that the Berean Study Bible is actually the easiest to read and is the most comprehensive crossover Bible when it comes to studying what's happening within the Bible. Now, that being said, also, generally, most people say that the King James Version, right here, whoops, I got so many books over here, that the King James Version, which I have here, that the King James Version is actually the closest to a word-for-word definition, word-for-word translation. But there's one part that tends to have a lot of people get really confused, that has a lot of people confused. And it confused me as well. And I've actually been called out on this before. In terms of my discussions, I've made comments on social media and I've talked about abortion. And of course, whatever you want to think about abortion, and I don't want to get into that necessarily right here, but, a lot of people sit here and think that the sixth commandment, which is translated by most people as, thou shalt not kill, okay, is actually potentially a misnomer. Because a lot of people use that commandment as you can't defend yourself. You're not supposed to, take the life of an animal, or those kinds of things. A lot of people try to say, thou shalt not kill is something that makes it so that you can't defend yourself. That you can't, you're not supposed to, again, kill animals and eat animals. So, being confronted with this often, I decided to take a look into it. And here's the problem that we have. Okay. Many Hebrew words are not necessarily translatable, direct translation from, Hebrew into English. Okay. So there's a lot of discussion in terms of the words that are actually being used. And so the funny thing is the Torah, which is actually pretty much the same as the Old Testament of the Bible. And I say pretty much the same because of my limited experience with it. Okay. But the point is that you have, questions with regards to, thou shalt not kill, or potentially, which this is the other word for it, thou shalt not murder. Now, there's a distinct difference between thou shalt not murder and thou shalt not kill. And one of the things that I found that was kind of interesting, and actually Dennis Prager from Prager University has this good write-up on it. And here, let me show you. So he has this decent write-up on it. This is on DennisPrager.com. And it's a column that he writes. And okay, think what you want about Dennis Prager. I'm not necessarily using him as a end-all, be-all, de facto standard of things. But, obviously you want to bring in as much information as you can. So Dennis Prager isn't the only person who basically brings this out. But I use this just because of the fact that he kind of concisely talks about this. Okay. And the thing about it is a lot of people, talk about the 10 Commandments prohibiting taking a life. And you're basically told thou shalt not kill. And that is actually the King James Version and translation of the sixth commandment. Now, the commandments only show up in, let me see, I think it's Deuteronomy is one of them. I'd have to look at I've got it up here. I can go and take a look. But what Dennis basically brings out is the fact that, so let me just basically tell you, read from the piece here from his article. You would think that all of the 10 commandments, the one that needs the least explaining would be the sixth, because it seems so clear. It's the one that the King James Bible, most widely used English translation of the Bible, translates it as "thou shalt not kill." And he claims, yet the truth is quite the opposite. This is probably the least well understood of the Ten Commandments. The reason is that the Hebrew original does not say, "do not kill." It says, "do not murder." Both Hebrew and English have two words for taking a life. One is kill, and I'm not going to try and, I think it's harang in Hebrew, and the other is murder, or rastach, or ratsach in Hebrew. I probably mincemeated the pronunciation completely, okay? But the difference between the two is enormous. To kill means taking any life, whether a human being or an animal, taking a human life deliberately or by accident, and taking a human life legally or illegally, morally or immorally. Okay. On the other hand, murder by itself can only mean one thing, which is the illegal or immoral taking of a human life. That's why we in English say, "I killed a mosquito," not "I murdered a mosquito." And that's why we would say the worker was accidentally killed, not that the worker was accidentally murdered. So why did the King James translation of the Bible use the word kill rather than murder? And he explains. He says, because 400 years ago when the translation was made, kill was synonymous with murder. As a result, some people don't realize that the English has changed since 1610 and therefore think that the Ten Commandments prohibits all killings. But of course it doesn't. If the Ten Commandments forbade killing, we would all have to be vegetarians, as killing animals would be prohibited. And we would have to be pacifists, since we could not even kill in self-defense. However, you don't have to know how the English language has evolved to understand that the Ten Commandments could not have prohibited all killing. The very same part of the Bible that contains the Ten Commandments, the 5 books of Moses, the Torah, as it is known by the Jews, commands that the death penalty for murder, commands the death penalty for murder, allows killing in war, and prescribes animal sacrifice and allows eating meat. A correct understanding of the commandment against murder is crucial because while virtually every modern translation correctly translates the commandment as "do not murder," many people cite the King James translation to justify two positions that have no biblical basis: opposition to capital punishment and pacifism. Regarding capital punishment and the Bible, as I note in my Prager University course on capital punishment, the only law that appears in each one of the 5 books of Moses is that murderers be put to death. Opponents of the death penalty are free to hold the view that all murderers should be allowed to live, but they are not free to cite the Bible to support their view, and yet many do. They always cite the commandment, "do not kill." But that, as should now be abundantly clear, is not what the commandment says, and it is therefore an invalid argument. So here's the thing. The thing about it is that it really depends, going back to the original text, which again, I've heard that the original text was Greek, was Hebrew and Aramaic. Okay, those are the 3 languages that is my understanding of what the original Bible was written in. And if you go back to the original point that I made in the beginning of the show, is that Hebrew actually has several words that cannot directly translate into English because the meaning is actually lost when you try to do the translation. It wouldn't necessarily surprise me to find that something like this is actually the case. And so this is part of the reason why we have to take a look at and examine all angles of a situation. We cannot just simply take something necessarily at face value. We need to examine the context. We need to understand and look beyond just the one thing that we're dealing with in order to fully understand and grasp the meaning of what they're trying to say. And so this is part of the reason why I bring this up, because this is very, very important. Now, let me go ahead and find it here. Okay. So the two places that the 10 Commandments are recorded virtually identically in the Bible, okay, is in Exodus 20, and that's verse 2 through 17. So I'm going to go ahead and just kind of pull that up. I'm going to look it up here. And let me see. Where is it? Exodus. I got to find Exodus. There's Deuteronomy. Exodus is before that. And Deuteronomy, by the way, is also where it shows up. But let me find Exodus here. Here we go. Exodus, is it 20? And okay, so Exodus 20, 2 through 17, as soon as I can find it here. Ah, God. There we go. All right. So Exodus 22 through 17. Remember the one of the. Okay. So here in the NIV, okay, so this is the New International Version. It actually states it as "you shall not murder." And that's in Exodus 20, verse 13, "you shall not murder." In the King James Bible, Exodus 20, let's find it here. I'm flipping too far here. Okay, so here's 20. 13, it literally says, "thou shalt not kill." So there's two versions of the Holy Bible, just two of them, that mention kill versus murder. So now let me check my English, my English Standard Version. Let's see if I can get to Exodus. Here we go. And 20. Come on. There's 20. All right. Exodus 20. Okay. In the English Standard Version, it says, "you shall not murder." And there's a note. Let's see what the note shows. The Hebrew word also covers causing human death through carelessness or negligence. It says in the note, in the English Standard Version. So we have 2 out of the 3 that I have in front of me. 2 out of the 3 say "do not murder," not "thou shalt not kill." Interesting. So again, this is where a lot of leftists don't follow, okay? Don't necessarily follow the Bible. Now, okay, so this is what AS Music over on Rumble says. It is "thou shalt not murder" in Hebrew. What you call the Old Testament was all in Hebrew. The Christian New Testament was written in Hebrew, Aramaic, and Greek. Okay. I honestly, I don't know enough, but I would imagine that that's probably it. So yeah. So, I mean, again, keep in mind, the King James Version, honestly, is the one who is essentially the most used, I would say, and also by some scholars say is the most word for word accurate. But I seriously question that, because I've also heard from multiple sources, and this is part of the reason why I have so many in various changes, is because of the fact that the King James Version, you've got to consider historically, King James initiated that. And also, and I don't know if this is true or not, and I don't want to seem blasphemous by saying this, but my understanding is that there was a little bit of influence by King James who essentially maybe modified it a little bit is the best way for me to say it. Now, don't get me wrong. Every person is available to do whatever they want as far as it comes to, whatever religious practice you want to follow. Okay. That's the brilliance of America. But it does make one wonder. It honestly does make one wonder when you take a look at something like this and you're saying, okay, well, everybody talks about thou shalt not kill. And the part that I got into trouble with, or not into trouble, but got into the conversation with, is because of the fact that I was making comments about abortion. And somebody came in and said, you say, or said something, I said something about thou shalt, they said thou shalt not kill. And I said, no, actually it's thou shalt not murder. There is a difference. And it was because of the fact that they were like, well, are you for the death penalty? And I was like, well, yeah, actually I am. I am for the death penalty. For a murderer, absolutely. And so they were like, well, thou shalt not kill. Why? How can you justify that? How can you justify being for the death penalty, but being against abortion? And I literally told them, I said, here's the thing is that it's thou shalt not murder or do not murder. And there's a huge difference between the idea of murder and killing. And so understanding those differences, I think, are really, and the context and the nuances with regards to the different languages in terms of the Bible in particular, but in terms of the ability to understand the meanings of some of these ancient and older situations like our Constitution and that, you have to look beyond just one singular translation. You have to look beyond just one singular usage of it. And so, again, I'm just going to encourage you, always question and search and try to find what it is that you're looking for. Try to find meaning in everything. And especially on this weekend, we need to understand and try to find and strive for the meaning that we have in terms of this particular scripture and this particular situation where the Son of God died for our sins on the cross. And if you watch Dan Bongino's last show on Friday, he described at the end of the program, he described the physical excruciating pain that Jesus went through on the cross, dying for our sins, dying for us, and for saying things like, they know not what they do. And that kind of stuff. That's in there, that kind of thing. I mean, just to hear what potentially in terms of a physical and scientific standpoint of what Jesus went through, it kind of gave me a humbling moment, but it makes me think even greater and make me look forward to the second coming in terms of my beliefs. And so to sit here and talk about all these different things, to be able to understand that even if we think we know everything, even if we think we've studied enough, there's always something else that you can learn. There's always something else that you can dig through, not just the one Bible, but maybe some other translations to find out and understand the full context of what it is that is attempting to be taught here. Ben Shapiro made a comment once, and I kind of thought this was interesting, was the fact that and this was an observation, I guess, more than anything else, and I believe it was Ben that said this. So maybe I'm attributing it to the wrong person, but I remember somebody once saying, they were like, it is highly likely that God did not necessarily talk to us directly in terms of a language that we could understand fully. That being able to do the translation between God's language and our language, which is the spoken word in most cases, that there could actually even be some misnomers there as well. And to sit here and actually think that God would actually speak to us in our own language, and this is me going a little bit farther than just the simple statement that was made. But how do we even know that God would necessarily talk to us and reveal himself to us in ways that we could fully understand? There's a lot of times where we sit here and we think that God is going to come to us and just like show up to us maybe as a burning bush, or maybe he's going to be an apparition of what we think of as an image of him, and that he is going to speak to us clearly and concisely. And it may not necessarily be that way. And so because of that, we've got to be able to open our ears, open our hearts, open our minds to be able to examine and be receptive to more than just what we consider as somebody talking to us. And we've got to understand this, and I think it's even more important to understand on the two special days that we have for Jesus, meaning on his birthday, on Christmas, and right here around Easter. To take a moment and understand the enormous sacrifice that Jesus took and gave to us on the cross, dying for our sins and giving us life everlasting. All right. And that, my friends, is my final Whiskey Musings thought on that subject for sure. Okay. So to step off of that's some pretty deep stuff. Hopefully I didn't kill you guys with how deep that was. But like I said, this episode was going to be a little different. I've had some time to think about some things. And so, when I drink, I think, and so there you go. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and get to, and I'll be honest with you, I'm not even really prepared for this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it anyway. Let me go ahead and do questions for whiskey. All right. And this question comes in. This is from Buddy Weiser, and he basically asks, what is the parliamentarian within Congress? And let me go parliamentarian in the House. I think it's actually the House, not just Congress. Because again, Congress is kind of, Congress is both houses. Okay. But we just want to get just the one. All right. We just want the one. And so for that, I'm going to go ahead and hit into history. All right. So the parliamentarian, let me go ahead and bring this up. So the parliamentarian of the House is essentially a nonpartisan official that is appointed by the Speaker. Okay, so they're not voted in. And so that was the thing that, he isn't voted in. He's appointed by the Speaker of the House, and basically the person is to render objective assistance on legislative and parliamentary procedure within the House of Representatives. During procedures on the floor, the parliamentarian Got to get that out. Parliamentarian sits on the speaker's right on the dais, or the stage, essentially. Okay. The parliamentary law of the House of Representatives derives from the Constitution and rules adopted pursuant to Article 1, Section 5 of the Constitution. These rules include not only the standing rules adopted from Congress to Congress, but also Jefferson's Manual, as customarily incorporated by reference in the standing rules. Wow, okay, today I learned about Jefferson's Manual. Looks like I've got some more learning to do. I got to go out and grab Jefferson's Manual to figure out what the heck's going on there. Okay, they also include rules enacted as law and special rules adopted as necessary. On this foundation rests a body of precedent established by decisions of presiding officers on actual parliamentary questions or by long custom and tradition. In resolving questions of order, the Speaker and the other presiding officers of the House adhere to the jurisprudential. Wow, they're really pushing my tongue. Jurisprudential principle of stare decisis, which, for those that don't know, stare decisis basically means a commitment to earlier decisions, which ironically, the Supreme Court has been arguably talking about things like the Roe v. Wade overturning in Dobbs. That was something with regards to stare decisis. They were talking about that being a big problem. And yes, buddy, they are appointed. He or she is appointed and not elected. They are appointed by the Speaker alone. So that means that Nancy Pelosi appointed their own parliamentarian. Now we have McCarthy in, and so McCarthy can appoint his parliamentarian as he needs. And so that's basically how that goes. Now, the office of the parliamentarian biennially publishes an annotated House rules and manual. Former parliamentarians, and I'm not going to list this, list all these people, but they each compiled parliamentary precedents for the House that remain invaluable records of its proceedings. These precedents fill 26 volumes comprising thousands of decisions over the more than 2 centuries of parliamentary practice in the House. And so, yeah, there's a bunch of them that are in here, that are out there in terms of the different decisions. So basically, the parliamentarian is essentially just a person who advises the Speaker and advises the House on whether or not they are actually following the rules that not only they set for themselves, but have also been set in terms of previous in previous House of Representative proceedings and decisions that have been made. So I kind of wonder what the parliamentarian thought of the whole idea with regards to the proxy voting, because again, I go back to that whole proxy voting. The whole idea of the proxy voting, if you go to Article 1, and I'm trying to see here where this talks about, I'm not going to be able to find it really fast, but if you go through Article 1, there is a section, and I talked about this on the last show, where Ken Paxton from Texas was suing the government for the $1.7 trillion package, spending package. He's basically suing over the idea that the Constitution calls for Congress, in particular the House of Representatives in this case, but for Congress to have a majority present in order to vote on stuff like this. So, yeah, this is kind of interesting. I wonder what the parliamentarian said about that stuff. Anyway, Okay, so there you have it. That was the question of the week. Parliamentarians of the House, are they elected? Are they not? Are they, how do they get into their position and what's their purpose? And there you go. They're basically an advisor to the House and the Speaker. They keep records of choices, and they are appointed by the Speaker, not elected. They are chosen by the Speaker of the House. Hopefully that answered your question there, Mr. Buddy Weiser over on Rumble. All right. Just really quick, I want to say thank you to everyone, and I hope that everyone who celebrates Easter, please take a few moments, understand that this is not, again, this is not a situation where you, we have secular celebrations like Easter egg hunts and bunny hopping around and Easter eggs and chocolate and all of this stuff. But again, it's really a religious gathering. It's a gathering and a celebration of the rising of Jesus from the grave. And that's ultimately where you should be focused when it comes to understanding the actual historical background for this holiday and for the sign that eventually he will come back again to this world in order to rule over it and to vanquish evil for good. And I honestly am starting to believe that that's coming a lot closer than most people can attest to. Anyway, all right. Yeah, that's true, J Mats. That stuff is for the kids. The kids are supposed to be having fun. You're right. You're right. And, Catholicism, the Catholics have a lot of things that they do, in preparation for Easter. And I grew up Catholic. I'm not practicing anymore. I'm not going to try and fake you like Joe Biden does. Him saying that he's a practicing Catholic, yet he does all these things that are definitely not Catholic. But I'm not gonna tell you that, but I was raised in the Catholic Church. My mother is still a devout Catholic. So anyway, yeah, keep childhood simple. All right. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Enjoy your Easter Sunday. Celebrate with your family and friends. I know we've got a lot of family coming over. And as a final thing, please remember, go to that website. If you have a mind to donate, please go to that website and do me a favor. Pray for Tim, pray for his family, and pray for the soul of the young man who passed suddenly. And head on out and see if you can go to that GoFundMe. And if you can, please give some money. I do appreciate that. And we will see you Wednesday right here on the Whiskey Musings broadcast. Good night, everybody.